Hello, my name's Robert Pilkington. I am 56 years old and I gave up work 8 years ago to care for my elderly mother. This is my mum. Her name is Betty Hargraves. She is 85 and a war widow. Now, me and my mum are asking not only Victorians but Australians to please help us, as we are the victims of one of the most disgusting political, media and police cover-up that you have ever heard. Now I ask you to bear with me for 20 or 30 minutes while I explain everything that's going on. Now, first up, this started out as a fight to not only save our house, which has failed because our house has to be demolished, but literally hundreds of houses in Yarrawonga. And what is happening is, every time the town receives as little as 10 mils, we go into flood mode in half a dozen areas. If we get anywhere up to an inch and a half, we are under flood up to our doorsteps. Now, this has been going on for over 15 years. My involvement in this got started when Bellew was Premier of Victoria. Now, also involved in this is SES, RSL, Legacy. Now this started as a political campaign against an obviously corrupt council. The only one that's saying it is not as corrupt council is the very people who are supposed to assist us with these matters. When the rain comes down, it only takes an inch for this to happen all over town. Now, this is a petition that Ken Dyer, myself and a few other people in town organised with 1,000 signatures. Now, next I'll tell you the politicians involved, and there's also quite a bit of police corruption going on here. Right, first up, the politicians that are involved is Mr Tim McCurdy, Mr Ryan, Mr Thwaites, obviously Mr Bellew, Jeanette Powell, and at a federal level, Sharman Stone. Corruption. During this, not only did we ask some questions about the drainage and what was going on with the draining systems in town, we asked about some local corruption. Now, because of that, me and my mother have been subject to 6 home invasion threats, 5 death threats, and numerous counts of violence by members of the public. Not just members of the public, we're talking Legacy, RSL, Rotary, and shopkeepers and councillors. Right.
Yep.
Now, we contacted all these members who are responsible for what's going on here, the Water Minister, Mr Thwaites, Jeanette Powell, who's the Minister for Councils, and Mr McCurdy. They all refused to help us in any way. In fact, it took us 2 years to drag. Mr McCurdy was the only one who would come to this meeting, as he had no choice. After the Liberal National Party refused to help us in any way, we then turned to Mr John Lenders of the Labor Party. Now, Mr Lenders was kind enough to ask Mr McCurdy and Mr Davison some questions in Parliament about this. Now, one of the most disturbing things that occur when we do have these floods is that the sewage backs up and you cannot use your toilet, because as you do, your toilet overflows and comes into your house. Now, this is also happening all over town. Now, amongst some of the paperwork, and I have thousands of pages of it, there is people going back from 2004 asking about the sewage overflow. This council has refused to do anything about it. Now, here's the problem with Yarrawonga. Yarrawonga, the main infrastructure for the town was put in 1959. Not only that, it is a floodplain, and it's always flooded continuously. But what this corrupt council's done, and knowing every time they've done it, it's planned to be the next city in Victoria. And what they've done, they've ignored every request to fix these problems and continue to develop and develop and develop, knowing there is major problems. Now, there's been Shell reports, quick fixes that cost a couple of $1 million, that have all been ignored or just haven't fixed the problem. Now, while this was all going on, I'm also asked my insurance company to come and inspect the house. Now, I had two different engineers come in here, both found all different faults of my house, but the insurance company still refused to pay us out or help us. But the funny thing is, I then had an independent architect come out here, and he told me what the main problem is that our house is built too low on a floodplain. And at the moment, I'll get the man with the camera to show you what's going on. You can see this white stuff. This is coming up all over the place. Move along here, mate. You can see this up to here. You can see what it's doing here. It's eating away my brickwork. See here, it's cracking my foundation. You can see here, it's taken out this layer of mortar here. This was all flat like that. Another crack here, as you can see. I'll get you just right along there. This brick here. Now I've got a dozen bricks like this. As you can see, it's actually eating the brick away. Now, the thing is, when you build on a floodplain, your house is to be built a certain distance above the ground. Well, as you can see, mine is not. Now, this is what they really don't want out there. Not only the fact about the sewage and the drainage can't be fixed in some area, is the fact that there's hundreds of houses built similar in Yarrawonga. I can show you 3 within 5 houses of mine are built the same way. So the actual bill of fixing will be in the hundreds of millions of dollars because people will have to be compensated. And in fact, in some of the areas they're built, they cannot be fixed at all. Now we'll get to the RSL legacy involvement in all this. My mother's a war widow. My stepfather died of his injuries from serving this country. Also, so did my grandfather. Now you'd think that Legacy and RSL would be there helping us, wouldn't you? Well, when we found off from the insurance company they were refusing to accept our claim because we blamed the drainage, and apparently we were the only one because everybody else in town was paid, we then turned to the RSL. Now, I contacted Mr. Brian Cosser. At the time, we were in the knowledge that he was supposed to be Mother's Legacy case manager. Well, it turned out he wasn't. But he told me, during my first contact with him, that there is funds available so that we could have something done to try and get compensation for a house which got to be demolished. But he was no longer the case manager. And that a Mr. Brian White, who is now the head of the local branch of Legacy, was, and told me to contact him. Well, I contacted this Brian White. 3 times I contacted Brian White and asked him to release the funds to help Mother so we could fight for this house. Well, Mr. White refused, and I'll explain to you why a little bit later on. Also, after that refusal, I went to the state council for Legacy and talked to Mr. David, Mr. Cool or Cold or something like that. After an initial response explaining the reasons why Mr. White was refusing, he also refused. I also then went to the federal president of Legacy. He also refused. After that, I then went to the state RSL and talked to a Mr. Jackson. He bugged me around for 2 months and basically done nothing either. So I stopped trying. So while we're getting into this corrupt council, we also asked why a certain percentage of the town was immune from any police charges and immune from any penalties from bylaws, where the majority of town was. And what I'm talking about is, I'll get the cameraman to see these white posts along this street here. What happens is, this is the showgrounds. We have 16 events, markets, circus, whatever here. And what happens is people park across the road here. Not only that, they run, as you can see, these white posts at the moment are all bent. we've just had a market today. What happens is people park all along there, which there'll be photographs of, and they just deliberately drive over these white posts. Not just here, around the corner there at McDonald's, just around this corner here, there's McDonald's, the same thing's happening around there. Now, the thing about that is, there's been over 200 of them knocked down. The thing about that, being a ratepayer, they cost us $35 each per one. So the bill for that, with the repair crew of 4 people, is in the tens of thousands of dollars. Now, we took out a petition, 200 people signed it in 8 hours, asked them not to only clean it up around this area where they're parking on footpaths, driving on footpaths and forcing people off footpaths, and running over a white post is called criminal damage to public property. Now, we took the petition, and after the council and police refused to do anything, 200 of us signed it. We produced it and give it to the council and the Rotary. Rotary's reaction was that, threw it back in my face and said, F your 200 people, we've got 2,000 people to come to here. Now that's a good attitude for Rotary, but that's the attitude of this town. We'll put photographs up and showing you the people parked on footpaths, people being forced off footpaths. And you're talking women and children are being forced off footpaths by cars. The police refuse to do anything about it, council's refusing to do anything about it. Now, funny thing is, there was another market that were occurring at the railway yards here in Yarrawonga. They were actually shut down because council got sick of complaints of the illegal parking that was happening around there. So our question is, why was that one shut down and this one was immune from any penalties at all? When we didn't ask to shut it down, we just asked them to clean it up so people's lives and property wasn't damaged and people's lives were safe. So that was part of it. Also, one of the things, you've seen my mother, this town has got approximately 2,000 people in a similar age and range and disabilities. Now the problem up the street is, just before we started this political campaign about that, they'd started street trading. Again, we didn't try and stop the traders from street trading, but we asked them to clean it up. Now we'll post a heap of photos where it shows you. There's at least half a dozen public seats you cannot sit on. There's areas up the street up to 100 foot long where you can't simply park your car and walk on the footpath because it's blocked by the traders and their product. Again, we didn't ask them to stop their trading, we asked them to obey the laws, which is the bylaws and road laws. Also, in the state of Victoria under the Disability Act, there is provisions that there is nothing to be sold directly onto a footpath or displayed or sold in the front of a shop in Victoria so that blind people can tap along. Again, we refuse. Now there's only a dozen and a half traders doing that, but you've got to think of public safety. People are continuously falling over up the street, especially old people, and besides the fact that none of them are obeying the laws. Now, because we gave a dozen and a half shopkeepers the petition, I was abused and threatened by a dozen and a half of them. Now, here's one of the other things about the street trading. One of the traders that is doing one of the worst things in blocking a seat and not obeying the bylaws is Councillor Don McPhee. Now, I've had several run-ins with Councillor McPhee, and as a councillor, Councillor McPhee should know that as a councillor he is not to do anything to seem to be making a financial advantage. Now, Councillor McPhee said to me on 7 or 8 times, probably more, I'm a councillor, nothing's going to be done about the bylaws. Well, that's illegal, councillor. Now, all the councillors in the town know this and they've all refused to do anything about it. We'll put up a heap of photographs and it'll actually shock you the state it's in. And it's pretty disgusting. Why should the town and people's safety be put in people's, safety walking onto a street? Why should it occur when the rest of the town is threatened and fined for breaking these laws? Now, I'll show you something. After we asked them to clean up, I haven't got it. About 3 months after we asked them to clean up all these bylaws and criminal laws and all that, the police and the council had a major article in the local paper asking the parents around one of the schools to stop breaking all these laws of illegal parking, which is driving across the road, parking on footpaths and stuff like that. Again, why should they all be penalised when nothing's done about what goes on about this market and around near McDonald's? These, as a result of producing these petitions asking not only Rotary and the shopkeepers to clean up what they're doing and to obey the laws, we have suffered 5 home invasion threats, 5 death threats. And every time I rang up the local police, led by Sergeant Higgins, I was threatened with false charges. This went on for a couple of years. Eventually they got sick of just threatening and put 2 lots of false charges on me and had me barred from here caring for my mother. Now, you've seen Mother, you can imagine what all this stress has done to her. Like I said, they refused to enforce any law concerning me at all. Now, one of the death threats, actually 2 of the death threats came from SEC workers here, Mr O'Meara and Mr Nunn, both CEOs of the local SES. Now, the story about that is, when it floods, our whole street's flooded and they block the roads. But they refused to block it properly and they refused to stop vehicles coming through. The first occasion happened, I noticed a car, it was an old combi, we used to call them hippie vans, driving through half a dozen times. Well, when you got water half an inch from your door, the last thing you want is people driving through. So I've remonstrated when I've seen this bill, but it turned out it was O'Meara. Well, he turned around and threatened my life and threatened to do me seriously grievous bodily harm in front of witnesses. So for that, I contacted the state SCS and put in a complaint. Second occasion was a similar thing. I again spotted, I believe it was a white ute driving through. Again I went out and remonstrated. Turned out it was Nunn from the SCS. That's fine. So again, I rang up and complained to the SES. After I'd done that, Mr Nunn and our legatee, Mr Brian White, came to our gate and in front of Mother threatened to do, again, to take my life and to do all sorts of physical damage right in front of Mother. Now, our legatee, Brian White, was standing behind Mr Nunn, egging him on while he done it. I called the police. I called Constable Tracy Pearce. Now, Constable Pearce has several times refused to help me after threats. Also, while Nunn was threatening me, he done considerable damage to my front gate there. Again, the police officer refused to do her duty and protect me and my mother. Now, I've also been threatened by many Rotary members about getting them to clear this up. I've also received numerous threats from members of the public who are shopkeepers. Now, again, the police refused to do anything. Now, after Legacy refused to help us, it came up to when they had one of their badge selling weeks. So after being refused from state, federal and our local legatees and RSL members, I started complaining to the local members who were selling badges. At first a couple of them were fine, and then it was like a curtain came down. Every time I mentioned it, I got abused by legatee members. One of them even pursued me up the street, and again, I had another death threat, home invasion threat done. Again, police were called. Constable Tanner was called this time. Constable Tanner, again, threatened me with charges. Nothing happened. Now, I've had probably a dozen and a half threats of violence every time they're called, whether it be whichever police member from Yarrawonga came up, and I'm talking Constable Walsh, Alice, the whole lot of them, I've been threatened with charges. Nothing's been done about anybody else, just me. Eventually they got sick of just threatening. They then proceeded to put 2 separate lots of charges on me and made me homeless. I was forced out of this town. And at the time, because of all this, I was suffering suicidal depression. I was only, before they put the charges on, 10 days before I tried to take my own life because I just couldn't believe the corruption which is Victoria. So I've ended up on the riverbank facing 2 lots of false charges. And Mum in fear of being put in the home because she's got no one else to look after her. Now, after the initial refusal of the police to enforce the law or protect me and my mother in any way, we contacted what was called the Office of Police Integrity. Now, the Office of Police Integrity was closed down. The reason it was closed down was, like a lot of our states, we've now got what's called an independent body against corruption. Now, we'll get to that in a minute. So anyway, what happens with this ABI is, because it was closed down, what they've done, they passed all the cases on to sergeants in the next town, to the places you had the complaint against. And of course, you'd get a phone call off a sergeant saying that there was nothing wrong. That was the end of the matter. So right now we'll go to the 2 lots of charges, false charges that were put on me by, one lot by Constable Tanner and Constable Welsh. One lot was put on me by Constable Ellis and Constable Pearce. Now, on the matters of Constable Ellis and Pearce, they were dropped within 5 minutes I had them dropped within 5 minutes without the aid of a solicitor. But what came out in the court was the fact that Constable Ellis and Constable Pearce had forced one witness to make a false statement. Once the judge heard that, he told me to put in an application to this Independent Body Against Corruption, or IBAC. That's fine. We come up to the second case. Now, on the second case, Constable Tanner and Constable Welsh colluded with a member of Legacy and 2 staff members at Rivers to make false statements. That also came out in the second lot of charges. They were also dropped. And again, I was instructed by the judge to put in an application to IBAC. So I did. So now this IBAC, it was created to deal with political corruption, police corruption, public service corruption. This is a response with all this, and I've got paperwork, witnesses, including councillors, you name it, all over the place can prove everything that I'm saying in this, and there'll be some articles attached to this, plus a heap of photographs so you can understand more what's going on. This is the response I've got from IBAC. All these issues are all private. None of these are within our jurisdiction. Go figure. Now, one thing I forgot to tell you is, when I was arrested on these false charges, Sergeant Higgins misled the bail bondsman. I ended up in jail in Wangaratta on a Friday. Now, when they arrested me, Constable Ellis took my painkillers and my antidepressants off me. So I was a bit stressed and worried about that then. Now I'll show you the reason I'm on the painkillers. You can see I've got no shoulder blades. So I'm in constant pain because of that. Now, so they've arrested me, they take me over to Wangaratta, throw me in the police cells at Wangaratta. Not only did the police refuse to give me proper painkillers, they refused to give me my antidepressants. I'd say that's the reason why Constable Ellis had taken it off me. Not only that, within 5 minutes of me thrown in these cells, I don't know, still to this day don't know how, apparently I upset an ice addict that was in there. Now this ice addict, after half an hour, and I had to put up with this for 2 days, was making constant death threats to me. And at one stage, which will be on the video, I had to press the panic button because I was in fear of my life. Not only did that occur, I did not have my false teeth at the time, so I couldn't eat properly. They left me in the same clothes for 4 days. And like I said, just flat out refused to give me any painkillers, medication. I had no sleep. So by the time they got me at the court Monday, I didn't know where the hell or what was going on. Mind you, I'm suffering severe depression. Now these police know I was suffering suicidal suicidal depression, because it was only 10 days before they arrested me on these false charges. They'd come to the house, and I tried to get them to kill me and shoot me because I just couldn't believe the corruption is Victoria. And with what's going on, the refusal of legacy. Now, I grew up believing legacy and Rotary and people like that. But when you've got people like that who are supposed to be, now all the people involved in this are supposed to be our most responsible citizens. Now I'll get back to these SCS before I forget. So after the death threats and I had to put in the second complaint, I then received a letter off the state CEO of SES. They removed our ability to be sandbagged. Mr Nunn and Mr White had obviously told them a few lies, and those lies were that I was actually threatening the SES workers. Now, that's an absolute lie. And that's in a recorded conversation to SES and the police. Now, the next thing, my mother. Obviously I can do a lot of things for my mum, but I can't shower. Now when this was getting really heavy and politicians all over the place refusing to help us and that, we realised we were going to have to sue the council. Now, Mother was receiving, the healthcare package was through what's called the Moira Healthcare Alliance. Mother had a case manager called Jody Barber. Now, this Jody Barber knew that I was starting to get pretty worn down and going into depression, and it was pretty stressful. Now, for a couple of months, she tried to get us to allow a so-called social worker from Moira Council to come and help us if she could in any way. Well, took us a while, took her a couple of months of wearing us down, and I knew we needed some sort of help. I allowed her to bring this woman, this social worker, a Mrs Lawless, to see if there was anything she could do to help us. Well, they were no longer in the door. Then Jody Barber and this social worker both started terrorising Mother, saying, Betty, you can't sue the council, you'll lose your house, and similar stuff like this on the phone for about 5 minutes. And in the meantime, I'm sort of spinning out and saying, look, just leave the house. They refused to. Now that's a major crime. It's called elder abuse for her doing that as her mother's care worker. So of course I tried to have something done about that. So I approached the health minister and approached her, the senior members down here, the CEO of this Moira Health. Refused to do anything about it. I then contacted Mr Bruce Pigden. Now he's the head of the board of management for this Moira Health Alliance. I also contacted Mr Wells, who is the CEO of the whole area's health system. Both of them refused to do anything. Both of them. Then, by this time, the original CEO, Mrs Murray, after refusing, she'd moved on. And there was a new head of the Moira Health Alliance, a Mr Lyle. And because I kept on pushing, they then took Mother's health care away from her, which is pretty low. So Mother didn't have a shower for 3 weeks, and then she only managed to get showers because of Villa Maria. They took some funds that were available to me as a carer to help me better care for Mother so that Mother could get some showers. Now, that went on until the police had me barred, and then she missed out again for another 2 weeks until another healthcare provider could be provided for her. Now that's a very serious crime, doing that to an elderly person, but it shows you what's going on in this town. As you can see, these are all the people that you're supposed to be relying on. Now I don't blame the organisations, I do blame the disgusting people that are involved in this. Now, we'll get back to this IBAC police cover-up. You might want to have a look at this. This is 21 police officers in Bendigo. That went all the way up to the inspector who covered up a drunken crash by one of his police members. 21 of them. Took 4 years for that to come out. Here is 266 police officers done for drink driving and similar offences. Now, with none of these, all these officers, nothing happened. Involved in this here, because I contacted Mr. Peter Ryan's office as well. He was the then Minister for Police. So not only Mr. Ryan, but the District Sergeant, the District Inspector, and with what happened in Wangaratta, there's probably at least 10 sergeants who are involved in this cover-up, and this is our area. So you're looking at Bendigo here, all over the state. All you ever see is corrupt police. I think it's more than enough time that there needs to be a Royal Commission into what's going on in the police force in here. Obviously I'm going to be requesting a Royal Commission for what's happened with the politicians here. Now, we'll get to the main media. These paper clippings I've shown you, they're all from local papers. Not only did I and literally hundreds of people ask the Sun Herald, the Sunday Sun Herald, television stations 7, 9, 10 and 2 for assistance. We all got blocked. Now when you got a whole town that's suffering from floods and has been for over 15 years, there's something seriously wrong. So obviously something has also got to be done about the media. When they're prepared to let the police corruption be unreported, and I'm talking 200 homes in this town are probably going to have to be demolished. Because what they don't want out is that fact I told you before about the fact that my house is built too low on a floodplain. Now when I was homeless and living on the riverbank and then mum in fear of being put in a home, I met this gentleman here. He was also homeless on the riverbank too. Now I'll let him explain to you what happened about him and the police involvement in his.
June the 5th, 2013, I was assaulted by a police officer at the Cobram Library. I reported the officer for assault, and the API gave the whole thing to John Higgins, who I find to be a lying, corrupt cop. He's a lying bastard as far as I'm concerned. And it was all covered up. I'm still to this day waiting for my API report. He rang me up and concurred with me that he'd found a teacher and a student at the school who agreed with me that I was assaulted by a copper, and he threatened me that if I continue this matter, he would see to it that my Schedule 8 painkillers for a broken back were taken off me, which they have been now. And I've been in pain for 28 months every day because of John Higgins telling me AMA I'm a junkie and a drug dealer. This all happened on June 5th, 2013. I've got all the paperwork. I've requested my copy of the API report. I've requested the dashboard cam tapes, which they tell me there was no dashboard cam in that car, yet the police officer who assaulted me went like this, everything's being recorded, and I went, praise God, because now neither of us can lie. That was all covered up. John Higgins is not an honest cop. He's as bent as a dog's hind leg, and he should go to prison as far as I'm concerned. And I would like to find out how I can get my Schedule 8 medication back for a broken back, because I've been in pain. So amen, thank you for your time and praise God.
What we're going to do is, now I think you're starting to realise by now this goes beyond whether you're a Liberal or Labor supporter. And the reason I'll tell you that is, even though Mr Lenders came up and provided me the information that Mr Davis and Mr McCurdy had misled Parliament, so has Sharman Stone, by the way, he eventually dropped off. In a backroom meeting between myself and Mr Dyer, who's one of the main movers to get this, for a major meeting we had with 1,000 people, we had a backroom meeting, also with one of the local businessmen. And we asked Mr Lenders straight out, what the hell's going on? Why is the media refusing to help us? And of course, like a lot of people, I'd always heard the Labor Party say that the major newspapers and television stations were controlled by the Liberal Party. Well, we have to tend to agree with that. When they've closed down the whole town on such serious matters, from the police corruption to the political corruption, the local RSL, especially RSL and Legacy, and that's the most disgusting, RSL and Legacy. What I would like whoever's watching this is to, what we're going to do, we're going to send the paperwork off to every independent in Victoria, every Green member in Victoria, and we're still going to try with the appropriate Labor ministers who are now in power. We're also going to send it to every federal independent and Green member as well, and also to every Labor member that's in opposition, the appropriate ones. What we'd like you to do is, if you're in any of these areas, to either Twitter them, Facebook them, ring them up and register you're absolutely disgusting what's going on. Also, I won't be asking, I'll be demanding the dismissal of Legatee Brian White and Mr Brian Cassar. Also, that Mr Cool from the state branch, and I never even got to speak to the federal legatee. All I got to speak to was a receptionist 3 or 4 times. Now, as for the media, I think you'll agree there's going to have to be a Royal Commission into there. If they've hidden this, what else have they actually hidden? For the media prepared to let people's lives be threatened, their homes to be ruined, and when you're talking sewage, and I'm talking, not only is the sewage back up, I've got a stat deck there which is produced to all these politicians and that, where my mother had to clean up her own sewage. Now at the same time, the same flood that occurred on, I know Mother was talking the truth because I went to go to my toilet just to have a pee and mine also backed up. And that's disgusting on its own. Obviously, there's going to have to be, I truly believe, I know Tony was pretty upset and he got pretty hateful about it. There's obviously got to be something done about the police in Victoria. You're constantly seeing how there's corrupt police officers. Just last month there's something about that leap which has been going on about 360 odd corrupt officers were still accessing it illegally. As for this IBAC, now it's supposed to be an independent body, and as you see in the reaction, the reply was nothing to do with them at all private companies. Well, this is what they're actually formed for. So I think it's rather obvious that IBAC needs to be shut down and shut down now, and a Royal Commission conducted into their actions, because I did read one article about this IBAC. In their first year there was 160 odd cases presented to them, majority of them about police corruption. Not one of them was taken up. They took up 2 cases, and it's in the papers now. One of them's over Teachers Union, which is public servants by the way, which they're saying is not within their jurisdiction. Now I've got a letter from them stating that, whatever, but obviously this IBAC has to be shut down. Now, in investigating which members, state members, for the appropriate ministers to send a brief summary of nothing short of evidence to, I noticed that there was 3 Labor members who are actually commissioners for this IBAC. So this IBAC's not independent. What happens is they get the cases, they decide which ones to present to these commissioners decide which ones are taken up. So obviously it's not independent. I don't know what's going to be done about that, but obviously IBAC needs to be shut down. At the end of this, we'll put up a complete list of all the independents and Green members of Parliament that this has been sent to, and I'm also going to send it to the Attorney General and the Governor General, state and federal, because it's such a serious matter. But like a lot of Australians, I'm getting sick of this corruption. We're all supposed to, sit here and cop it, and it sent me into suicidal depression. Now, I thought I was pretty strong and I could handle all this, but I just couldn't. The only thing I thought was, if I commit suicide and leave a suicide note why I've done it, something might be done about it after an inquest. Now, from to drive me to that, it's just not right. This is why something's got to be done about the media. These people are prepared to let this happen. They just don't care, and that's pretty disgusting. As you can see, I'm a pretty proud Australian. I've got 2 healer dogs, an old mum, and it's just shattered me. So what I'm asking is, please help us and help yourselves. Now, this is just a 5-minute summary, a couple of facts I forgot to put in, and just a basic brief summary. What I'm actually asking is for you to contact these politicians that will be listed at the end of this video, and also contact and give you a discuss to the main media outlets that have also been involved in this. And please, not just help us, help everybody. What happened to me and Mother is just beyond words. As you can see, it upsets me, and I was a bit all over the place, but that's just some of the things that happened to us. Now here's a couple more facts I forgot to put in. Mr McCurdy started his political career here as a councillor. I've also got some paperwork there that goes back to 2005, when people were asking about the sewerage then. Mr McCurdy is full knowledge of all this and has allowed this to go on. All the councillors know of this, even the new ones we elected from New America and elsewhere, that got in and swore to fix this problem. Totally ignored it. So obviously, as you can see, there's quite a bit involved. Like stated earlier, I have all the witnesses, all the paperwork, all the evidence is there. It's just a matter of finding a non-corrupt public servant or politician. So please help me. On Tuesday I will be sending off a copy of some of the evidence to the members and public servants. We will be sending a heap of paperwork too. Now, just on the matter of the RSL legacy, I truly believe, like I stated, that Mr Cassar and Mr White need to resign. Not only do they need to resign, there's been dozens of you local legatees and RSL members that I've also let know about the disgusting state of their branch, and instead of helping us, have made death threats and home invasion threats. Well, I also believe all the yous need to resign, go to the nearest shrine of remembrance and pray for forgiveness from the very people whose family you are sworn to help and protect. And for a lot of the locals, you might want to remember, I started this as a fight to save not only our house, but hundreds and hundreds of houses in the town. And so what if I asked you to think about the public safety regarding the parking and the main street? As the petition stated, the main street is a public street and the public has the right to move up and down on that quite safely, not just people like Mother, anybody. And all we done was ask you to clean it up. We didn't ask you to stop your street trading, we asked you to think of public safety. And also the fact that it is illegal so that blind people can tap along the street, not to sell directly or have up against your shop front. There's even one restaurant there where one of those white bubble strips is, who quite often has his customers sitting over the top of that on their chairs. That is illegal. Please stop it. And I actually think all these people that have done what you've done to us in the position you are, want to have a real good hard look at yourselves and think of the whole community, not yourself, which is all we ever ask you to do. Anyway, thank you, and anybody watching, please help me.